Now, before I wish you all a very Merry Christmas, I need to ask you a question. Who in their own right mind decided it would be a good idea to give Sadiq Khan a knighthood? Sir Sadiq Khan. It even sounds silly. Think of the crime stats. Think of what he's done to the capital of our once great country. I'll remind you. Knife crime, gun crime, gang wars, street robbery, house burglary, violence against women, car theft, the attack on your average working family through his ULEZ scheme. The list is endless. Anything that you wouldn't want to rise has risen at an astronomical rate, and London is now one of the most unsafest places to go, walk and roam. So before the king puts a sword on his shoulders, stand up and let it be known that you're absolutely appalled by such an absurd suggestion. Sir Sadiq Khan, it's almost as ludicrous as Sir Keir Starmer when you look at the damage he's caused to the country. He's been named two-tier Keir for good reason. We now live in a two-tier country under a two-tier government. All you've got to do is look at the latest case where Nigel Farage got milkshake thrown over him. No jail sentence. If you consider people have been sent to jail for Facebook posts and retweets, what do you think would happen if a Labour MP had milkshake thrown over him? They'd say first it's milkshake, next it's acid. So we need to make a mark and stamp down on this behaviour. They would have gone to jail. But because it was Nigel Farage, a right-leaning politician, the perpetrator did not get sent to jail. Two-tier Britain. Will Keir Starmer even last the full term? How can the British public forgive a man that cut back on the winter fuel allowance? Now, you and me are probably having a very Merry Christmas at the moment, but other people, not so much. There's going to be elderly people freezing in their homes while Starmer is tucking into Turkey because he cut back on the winter fuel allowance. How can anybody forgive a man that takes our taxes, strips the elderly of their warmth and pumps our money into migrant hotels? It's despicable. Surely the British taxpayer should have a firm say in where their money goes. Now, I don't want to contribute towards a migrant hotel. The elderly, the weak, the vulnerable, the poorly, that's where our money should be going. We shouldn't be spending £8 million a day on migrant hotels. And we don't want our money going to foreign countries when our own country is in a disastrous state. We're living in a country where a convicted terrorist can sue a pub for having an offensive name. Offensive to who exactly? Since when have the feelings of a convicted terrorist matter to anyone? At the very least, he should be seen and not heard. At the very best, he should be deported and jailed for life. But no. Mr. Terrorist comes along, doesn't like the name, and he's in a position where he can actually sue. Wow. Now, we've recently had the Manchester airport attackers charged. It took months to get the charge. And do you know why they was eventually charged? Because of the public pressure that was applied. If we'd have remained silent and not said a word, it would have gone left uncharged and swept under the carpet like it never happened. Pressure isn't throwing rocks at police. It isn't violence on the streets. It's a continual overload of words and protest. Be outspoken. Be fearless in your approach for change. Do not submit or surrender to the propaganda or the fear that they want to instill in you. Keep on pushing on. Eventually, they may think that the British public have to come first before illegal criminals, which is another thing our money is going on. When we've got soldiers on the streets, I'm sure we all agree that if you're not from the UK and you commit a crime, you break the law, you bend the rules, you overstep the line, you're no longer welcome. You need to go back to where you came from. Return. You're now their problem. We've got enough of our own to deal with, let alone somebody else's. Reform UK. You need to pay more attention to the Patriot movement. Without the Patriot vote, we're going to be left with Starmer or the Tories left in power. Reform UK need to commit to uniting the kingdom. A cultural movement that Tommy Robinson has already put in place. No more sweeping him to the side. No more denouncing him. No more pretending that his hard work hasn't done wonders for the country and bringing us all together. If you continue to ignore his efforts and the sacrifices he's made and underestimate the support he has, you will fall flat on your face. People are voting for you, Reform, because you've promised to make the change. You need to deliver. And that means bringing everybody into the team, especially those that have been speaking about the problems for years, that open the door for you to speak about them more freely. Puberty blockers. Those in favour of puberty blockers and gender reassignment for children. Not only is it madness, it's child abuse. Now, if your child wanted to jump off a cliff, you wouldn't give them a lift to beat your head. We need to determine a fine line between insanity, stupidity and rationality. The insane and stupid can no longer consume our thoughts or our time. We've got better things to be doing with it, like fighting for our country and stabilising the community. Sharia courts need to be banned in the UK. This isn't Saudi Arabia. And if you want to live in the UK and equality is such a hot topic, then you need to operate within the country's legal framework. A legal framework that's been the envy of the world for centuries. By all means, if you want to be held to account according to Sharia law, pack your bags and fuck off. Oh, and the BBC have threatened to send enforcement officers to our homes over the Christmas period to check whether we've got a licence or not and to see if we're watching their biased lefty tripe. Now, should a BBC enforcement officer knock on my door, they will not be greeted with a mince pie or a Merry Christmas. They'll also be told to fuck off. And on the topic of reprehensible behaviour and characters, let's go back to Keir Starmer. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. And as he's spoon-feeding you that bullshit, he thinks you're going to eat it. Little does he know, he underestimates the British public. We are far more switched on than he'd like to think, or imagine, or believe. And let's hope that Keir Starmer does not last a full term, because he's embarrassing the whole country on the world stage. It was recently raised in Parliament that first cousin marriages should be made illegal. What do you think? The long list of birth defects aside, lighting a scented candle and listening to Magic FM whilst you impregnate your cousin is pretty odd. And when does the madness end? Couldn't you marry your brother, your sister, your mum, your dad? I think it's best all round across the board that you cannot marry or copulate with a family member. It just makes sense to me. The peddling of gender confusion needs to stop. First and foremost in schools, then sports, then private spaces. The education system needs to get a firm grip on reality. There's two genders, which means only two toilets are required, boys and girls. It doesn't matter how you feel or how you want to identify. The bottom line is you're either one or the other. Stop confusing the children. Whether we realise it or not, we're under attack from all angles. And the latest terror attack in Germany should be a swift reminder of that. Now, anyone that denies the fact that the West and Christianity is under attack, may I suggest you lay off the brandy this Christmas. And the mainstream media that reported on that atrocity should be ashamed of themselves. And here's the thing. The bias and lies have caught up with the mainstream media. They're gone. They're dead. Rest in peace. Independent journalism is the way forward. It's the independent journalists that are going to seek the light and bring you the truth. Now, how are we going to turn this all around? How are we going to make the country a more enjoyable place to live? How are we going to sustain peace and happiness? How are we going to save the UK? Well, we got to start by saving ourselves from misinformation, division, distraction. The media and the government want us at war. They want the conflict. They want the division. We're stronger together, and when we work together, better things happen. And there are some tremendous people out there. We've been lucky enough to have them on the podcast. So go back and take a look at some previous interviews. There's still people out there that want to make a change, that are happy to put their head above the parapet and say, hey, I'm not going to live in fear. I'm going to say exactly how I feel, that are willing to sacrifice their freedom even. Men and women that really, really want their country back. But let's take a moment to remember the people that aren't with their families because they dared to post their anger and concerns on Facebook or on X. Peter Lynch, who was sent to jail out of his comfort zone, not a criminal, not used to those surroundings. It all got too much to take and he took his life. Rest in peace, Peter Lynch. And I hope his family are raising a glass in memory of that man that tried to make the change that the country so desperately needs. The only way this is going to change is if we pull together, stand together, work together. We are bigger, better and stronger together. Please take that on board Have a very, very Merry Christmas. Love each other. Be there for each other. Let's get our country back. And with that said, I bid you farewell. And never forget, I fucking love you.